that spiritual joy. Psalms 36:8 says, they shall be abundantly satisfied with the fatness of thy house, and thou shalt make them drink of the river of thy pleasure. Oh my God, what a great and mighty God we serve. See, God has already stored up these treasures for us. All we need to do on this Monday is what I say all the time. When you get up in the morning, you get up and you get down. You get up, you get down. You get up out the bed and you get down on your knees and you begin to repent and you begin to thank God for his son, Jesus Christ. And you begin to have gratitude and an attitude of gratitude of the price that was paid for you, and that abundant, that spiritual abundance you can have. And we need that, because we have sisters and brothers, we have children and mothers and fathers and widows and orphans and fatherless children that we need to help. So if you're going through a dry stage right now, my brothers and sisters, remember, there is a way out of your mess, and it's JESUS. Why don't you call on him?
Where can you buy a brand new Nissan with a lifetime warranty? Kingston Pike. Hey, folks, Gerald Anderson with Ted Russell Nissan. You heard it right. Every new Ted Russell Nissan comes with a lifetime warranty, and that's a long, long time. Ted Russell Nissan on Kingston Pike.
Good morning and welcome to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Ask Your Neighbor can also be heard and seen on our website, WYSHradio.com. And if you are in Anderson, Rome, or Morgan County and have Comcast cable, you can watch Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV Channel 12. Ask Your Neighbor is the program where you call in and do just that. Ask Your Neighbor. Do you have a comment? Do you have a problem? Or do you have a question? Then call in and ask your neighbor. 865-457-1380 or toll free at 877-711-4005. And for those of you that might be listening or watching on the internet, you can email from our website, WYSHradio.com. Just click on the Contact Us button and email your questions. Now sit back and listen as listeners throughout East Tennessee and the entire world answer your questions on Ask Your Neighbor on BBB TV 12 and AM 1380 WYSH.
The following is a pre-recorded best of edition of Ask Your Neighbor. Good morning, everybody, and welcome into Ask Your Neighbor. I told you earlier, Congressman Chuck Fleischman was coming in here, moved schedule around to get up here. Good to have you. How are you, sir?
Great to be here. It's always great to be at your station. As you know, I'm an old radio guy. Cut my teeth in radio years ago, and just good to be with you, sir. And your listeners are outstanding. But yes, we braved the snow. There wasn't much snow in Hamilton County.
A little bit up here, though.
Yeah, quite a bit up here. But it's just always great to be with you. I'm going to be in Clinton today, quite a bit. And just love to be here.
So, man alive, we're never at a loss of things to talk about.
I know you're not.
No,
That's right.
We can talk all the time. But
Meredith is not shy. You're great at what you do.
Thank you very much. I
yes,
appreciate that. But I want to, let's just start off. Let's get right to it. I sent you a message here a while back, just kind of on a personal level. Your name was in the hat a little bit when they were talking about Speaker of the House.
Yes, sir.
How'd that come about? What's that feel like?
I'll give you the condensed version. Okay. Unfortunately, in my view, there was a move to vacate the chair on Kevin McCarthy.
Yes.
Look, I got along well with Boehner. I got along well with Ryan. I got along well with McCarthy. I work well with leadership. I work well with people.
Yeah.
I get things done. I work well with the Senate. I work well with administrations, whether we agree or disagree. My job is to get things done for the people of our state and our district. So once the chair was vacated, literally we went about 3 weeks and could not decide on a speaker. Scalise got his name in there. The gentleman from Ohio,
Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan got his name in there. All friends, and nobody could get enough votes. Well, literally, my friend Tom Emmer got his name put in there, and that did not work out. We'd spent hours and hours and days. So when he decided not to do that, I started texting back and forth with my good friend, President Trump, and basically we had 4 people's names thrown in the hat. I had about a half hour to decide, so I didn't have a prolonged campaign. But President Trump put out finally that whomever was in that final 4, he would support, which was great. Of course, that went viral nationwide. Yes. So Johnson ended up getting it. I did not. But it's tough when you're an appropriator, and I'm a Republican, but I'm an appropriator.
Sure.
What that means is I'm on the spending side of things.
Yeah.
I fund our great things in Oak Ridge. I try to help all of my communities out, the Chickamauga Lock, but it's just tough to be an appropriator and win. So we didn't win that election, but I had a good hour worth of fun and got good honorable mention. And now I'm still a Cardinal, a subcommittee chair on appropriations, and in a good spot. And I support our current speaker. He's doing a great job. We have a majority of 1.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's tight, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
What do you think about the continued resolution? Here we are, voted we're going through March to keep things open. What do you think?
I like to do budgets. The energy and water bill that I actually wrote for the House and passed in the House was a very good bill. Obviously, our friends in Oak Ridge did very well. DOE reservation, whether it was the lab, Y12 UPF, cleanup, did extremely, extremely well in that bill. On the water side, fully funded the Chickamauga Lock project, water projects all over the country. I was disappointed that we hadn't had a budget yet, but I always vote to want to keep the government open. I don't think closing down the government ever works. I've been through 3 government shutdowns since I've been in Congress. They cost more money. They cost more grief. We lose millions of hours of person hours, people who should get paid because it's not their fault, but get sent home for a while. They get furloughed. So we kept the government open. And now March the 1st and March the 8th, we've got to get fiscal 2024 in the books. Why? Because September 30th, the year ends, and October 1st, fiscal 2025 begins. So tough times. Last year, I have to tell you this candidly, was the toughest year I've had up there. We've had tough years before. It was contentious. It was difficult. As you know, I've always tried to be a peacemaker, a consensus builder. I'm a conservative Republican, but I work with people to get things done. I've worked with 3 administrations to try to get things done. Do I always agree with them? No, of course not. But I stay in there and I work hard every day just to try to get things done, and we do that.
Was it contentious, or was it hard just because of the discord within our party?
All of the above. All of the above. I will tell you, Kevin McCarthy told me, the Democrats told him, let me be specific, Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, and Steny Hoyer. If they do a motion to vacate the chair, we got your back, buddy. Don't worry about it, okay? Well, guess what? Every single Democrat voted. And I had Democrats come to me on my bill. Chuck, you've written the best energy and water bill I've seen in years. Can't vote for it.
But it's good.
Okay, but it's outstanding, but can't vote for it. Good luck with it. And I passed it. I only lost 1 Republican vote. Of course, that's when we had a grand margin of 5 in the House. We're down to 1 now.
Wow. How do you see, here we're going into, an election year, right in the middle of it, primaries today. They're voting in New Hampshire right now, aren't they?
Yes, indeed.
How do you see all that shaking out?
I've always been very candid with my constituents about everything. I'm a Donald Trump person. Friend of mine, we converse, was down to see him about a month and a half ago at Mar-a-Lago. Had a great time. He said one of the nicest things about me to my friend Gus Bilirakis, who's my roommate. He represents the Tampa area. Good guy. He said, Chuck Fleischman, if he is not he is one of the most well-respected people in Congress by both sides. And that came from Donald Trump.
That's a high compliment.
That was a very high compliment from someone like him who's very charged politically. Let's face it. We always know where Donald Trump is and what he's feeling. That day when I went down to see him, he was funny. He says, "We're going to make a video, Chuck." And I said, "About what?" "We'll figure it out when we do it." So I go into his studio and he says, "Start talking." He says, "I'm going to direct your video." So we did a Thanksgiving video together. It was just fun to be around. But Trump will win in New Hampshire. He won in Iowa. He will be the nominee. I said a year ago he would be the nominee. So it's going to be Trump versus Biden unless Biden's numbers continue to go down as they are. I mean, he is losing in groups that he can't afford to lose. Arab Americans, young Americans, African American males. He's still doing well with African American females. African American males doing poorly. Latinos, my goodness. We've got great opportunity. But to answer your question, I think Trump wins New Hampshire handily.
You think Nikki Haley will drop out after New Hampshire, or you think she'll go through South Carolina?
She'll go through South Carolina, I think, because that is the state where she was governor. But Trump's got everybody there. He's got both senators. He's got the current governor. He's got just about every member. He even got Nancy Mace the other day, which is great. I know Nancy very well. I served with her. And but she endorsed him. Wow. And she was one of his most vocal critics. So I think it's coalescing. The real question is do the Democrats look at Biden at their convention and say, look, you're not going to get there. And remember, unlike the Republicans, they have superdelegates on the Democratic side. As you know, I'm a Republican with a capital R, but so let me take a pop at the D's. They're a party of elites. Mm-hmm. They like superdelegates. They like to anoint and appoint. So they've got that superdelegate ability to pick somebody different. Now, the question is do they ever look at a Gavin Newsom or a Michelle Obama or something like that? If they do, we'll have our hands full.
Do you think that Michelle Obama would actually consider doing something like that?
I hope not. She would be formidable.
Yeah.
No question about that. I want to run against Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Because Trump will beat him. We've got to win the House. We've got to win the Senate. But we've got to have the White House. There's just too much at stake.
Do we stand a chance of reclaiming the Senate and at least continuing our majority in the House?
Yes. Senate map looks a lot better. First of all, we're going to win in New Hampshire. I'm sorry. We're going to win in West Virginia.
Okay.
The Manchin seat will be solid red Republican. We know that. We can win in Montana. We can beat Tester. We should win and beat Sherrod Brown in Ohio. Sherrod Brown is an anathema for Ohio. Ohio is now ruby red. He's a liberal Democratic senator. He's won several times. If we pick the right candidate, we should pick up there. The map in the Senate looks good. The House, I think, is going to be largely dependent, candidly, on redistricting. Mm-hmm. New York's going to redistrict its map. So is North Carolina. We'll do well in North Carolina, not in New York. We're going to probably lose a seat in Louisiana now to the Supreme Court, making them redistrict. May lose one in Alabama. They've got a new district. So it's going to be tough, but I will say this. If Trump does very well on election night, we will keep the House. If for some reason he does not.
Downvoting is what you're.
Yes, no question.
Down ballot?
Yeah, and I'm down ballot. Let's face it. It's Trump, Marsha Blackburn, and then me this time. So I'm no longer at the top of the ticket. I won't even be second. I'll be third.
What do you think right now? I mean, I know what you think. We'll just talk about it in a moment. Immigration and the lack thereof of any kind of regulation or rule or enforcing our laws. What are we going to do about it? What can you do about it?
Okay. I have been very critical of the Biden administration on several fronts, and I think justly so. But the one issue that he has failed beyond failure, abysmal failure, is immigration and open borders. He incentivized it early. 64 times he did things. And let me be specific. Stay in Mexico. The stay in Mexico policy made sense. It worked.
It was easy.
It was easy.
Yeah.
Joe Biden dismantled this, created this situation. 8 million illegals have poured in. They'll never come to their court dates. They're going to be here. It's a problem. But guess what? Now they're in these quote-unquote sanctuary cities in New York, in L.A., in Chicago, and they're breaking their backs financially.
I saw them. I went to New York recently, and it's evident, you know what I mean, that they've got them. That they're trying to find places to house them. And so, I mean,
they're sending school children home from their public schools to put illegals in there.
Yeah.
It's a problem. And now Biden is like, hey, I want to deal on immigration. This is probably the worst job done on anything. And again, I have problems with a lot of the things that he's done. Candidly, his Secretary of Energy has worked well with me on some issues to help Oak Ridge. I had lunch with her a couple of weeks ago. We're conversant. His Secretary of Veterans Affairs, I worked with him to keep a national military cemetery in the great state of Tennessee. So there are some areas where we have worked together. I'm like you. You keep an open door policy. As long as I've known you, okay? And we were talking about this earlier about people liking me, not liking me, liking you, liking some of our friends and not. I love your friends. But be that as it may, I've always kept an open door policy, whether it was the Obama administration, the Trump administration, or the Biden administration. Secretaries can come in and sit and talk with me. Doesn't mean we're going to agree.
Sure.
But I keep an open door. And guess what? That allows me to get things done, even though I'm a right-wing Trumper.
Well, and I feel like that at least that benefits our country. We all have what we hold tight to, our beliefs and our values.
Sure.
But it never hurts to listen to people. I've many times discovered I'm wrong. When I thought I was 100% right by just sometimes listening to somebody else that might have a better way, better way around.
And things change.
No.
And dynamics change, and relationships change, and people change. Some of the people in my very first race, and I had the toughest primary in the country.
I remember
3 times, but my very first one, I ran against the state party chair, and she was a formidable candidate, was a good candidate. And some of the people, even up in this part of the world, one of my good friends from Oak Ridge was all in for her. And after I won, I mean, this guy could not be my biggest supporter probably up here. And he just always goes back. He goes, wow, how did I blow it in the first race? I said, you didn't blow it in the first race. You chose a viable candidate. We just happened to win.
Well, I feel like that as a country, we all should get behind our elected officials, no matter who they are, whether even if they're not who we chose. We should all be rooting for them to win, because it's just like the president. I disagree with this president completely, but I really wish he would. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if he did great for the country. Yeah. He won't.
He's pitiful.
I agree.
And it is sad. I had I go to the White House for the Christmas party. I did it with Obama. I did it with Trump, and I've done it with Biden. And I just like the White House Christmas party. And they finally got the eggnog right. They're serving non-alcoholic eggnog for me.
Well, good.
As you know, I don't drink, but the first year I saw that eggnog there, and I thought it was non-alcoholic. And Obama's like, hey, take it easy on that stuff. I said, Mr. President, this is the best. This is the best eggnog I ever had. He said, Congressman, it's loaded with rum.
That makes it
That's
good.
after I had 3.
So
I told my lovely wife, Brenda, I said, I probably chased you around the White House all night. Don't even remember it. So, poor Brenda. We love her. But be that as it may, but this year, Biden had... And the only reason I knew that, they said, for you, Congressman, we're going to put nutmeg on the non-alcoholic eggnog.
So you'll know which one is which.
So I had my 3.
That's fantastic. One thing I think people take exception with the current administration that's not really policy as much as it is social issues. I mean, they're endorsing children that can change their sex at young ages, athletes that are males competing against females. We've got stuff going on here in the state of Tennessee where we've got Satan clubs right now,
Isn't that
going
sad?
into schools.
Oh, sad. Well, we've got a First Amendment, and thank God for our founding fathers. When I go back and study history, we almost did not have a constitution. We had the Articles of Confederation that were really not working. It was a very loose confederation of former colonies, states. And to get the Constitution to come together, they had to do the Bill of Rights. And the First Amendment is so important. I think it's great in the United States of America that we can be here in Clinton, Tennessee, and be able to say whatever we want, good, bad, or indifferent, about our elected officials, about me. You go on my webpage, and you look, there are people there who love me, but there are people there daily who don't. I mean, he's the worst congressman in America, ... And, sometimes I'll just love to meet them and say, I so appreciate you're doing that. Sometimes I agree with you. But it's great that we can do that. Under the First Amendment, I'm a committed Christian, and that's how I believe. But it just hurts me that you'd see a satanic club out there. Under the First Amendment, that's legal. I still think it's wrong. But what are you going to do? I mean, that's where we are right now. This whole trans thing, I think, is very, very sad. And it's really hurting women's sports.
Oh, yeah.
At a time where we want to see women's sports really, really do well.
Does the Supreme Court or some legal entity need to get involved and make a ruling on this to where...
Ultimately, they will.
Okay.
I think you're going to see a variety of different circuits. And the federal court system is fascinating. We have district courts. I used to belong to the Eastern District of Tennessee as a lawyer, practiced there, as well in the state courts. But the federal circuits are broken up. Some are more conservative. The Sixth Circuit, Tennessee is actually in the Sixth Circuit with Ohio and some other states, traditionally a more conservative court, more conservative circuit. By contrast, the Ninth Circuit, that has California and some of the western states, a more progressive, more liberal court, understandably. But ultimately, the United States Supreme Court's got to figure out if there's differences out there, how and which way to rule. And they don't always rule the way I want.
Sure.
They did in overturning Roe versus Wade. I've always felt that Roe versus Wade was flawed constitutional law. Regardless how people felt about the abortion issue, it was flawed constitutional law. What they did in Roe was they went out in the 70s, early 70s, and basically created, if you will, read into the Constitution something that wasn't there, in my view. And if you look at the overturn in Dobbs, basically what they're saying is, look, that's never been in the Constitution, and they leave it to the states. Now, does that mean everybody agreed with the result? No, I did, but that's where we were. We just saw the other day, the Supreme Court of the United States in a 5-4 decision handed the Biden administration a huge win.
Take up the razor wire in Texas.
Razor wire in Texas. And you look at that and you say, well, I can understand how the justices on both sides felt about that issue. Did I like the result? No. But so will the Supreme Court take up these issues? Yes, they will. They've taken up voting rights. I've not agreed with all their voting rights decision. They basically said that the Alabama map had to go, that the Louisiana map had to go. And sometimes they let maps stand. I'm concerned about what New York State's going to do with their map.
So the federal government comes in and says to the states, you need to fix your districting map to be more what?
Okay, great question. The Voting Rights Act that was passed in this country and has been renewed in 1964 forward laid out certain things. So we have a situation where you can basically say the states can decide how they want to redistrict. In our great state, Tennessee, our state legislature decides it. In some states, let me be specific, Michigan, they use quote-unquote independent boards to decide. In other states, judges can draw it. So different states decide how they're going to draw their congressional districts. Tennessee has 9. Some states just have 1. Every state has 2 senators, but some states only have 1 member of Congress. Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota. Got it right. But if you've got more than 1, you've got to have redistricting every 10 years under the Constitution. So the United States Supreme Court has said, look, if you go out of your way to, and I'll use the term gerrymander, draw the lines that are disproportionately unfair to African-American voters, okay, that they will go in and insist that they draw the lines a different way.
So it's about minorities, it's not about political affiliation. It's about...
Correct.
Okay. I didn't
know. They don't want to disenfranchise, understandably so, African-American voters.
Sure.
Now, African-American voters I say traditionally, really since Franklin Roosevelt, have voted overwhelmingly with the Democratic Party.
Sure.
Okay? We know that. They know that. Now, Donald Trump is changing some of that,
Yes.
okay, with African-American males. I mean, it's amazing to see that, and with Latinos. But as our country changes, and let's face it, probably in a few decades, we're going to see the Latino Hispanic population grow in this country. The African American population stay relatively stable. The Caucasian stay relatively stable. So we're going to see changes across this country, and that's going to affect who we elect, how we elect, and probably all the way up to the president.
Really? And so it just seems like that the states are better suited to take care of it. So the federal government don't draw it. They just say to the states, you need to draw it in a fair manner.
Yes.
Okay.
But the high court is very deferential to states, and there's something going on now that I find abhorrent. I find it wrong. We do not have it in Tennessee, but it's in Maine. It's in Alaska. It's in Massachusetts. It's called weighted voting. Okay?
Weighted voting.
Weighted voting. My friend got more votes in Maine for Congress, his name is Ponequin, than his Democratic opponent. His Democratic opponent is in Congress. And this is what these progressive states are doing, and they're doing it legally. So let's say Meredith, Fleischman,
I'm very familiar with weighted voting.
Beauchamp. Let's throw Beauchamp in there.
Throw Allen in there.
Throw Allen in there. I love him. Anyhow, okay, we're all running for the same seat.
Yeah.
Okay? I get more first place votes.
Yeah.
All right? Meredith gets his fair share, but he gets more second place votes. You get points for that. Meredith may be going to Congress.
We deal with that with Nielsen ratings. They
really
do weighted. Yeah, because
tell me about this. Is great.
Well, it's just like Anderson County is a smaller county versus say Knox County or some of the others. So when you pick up a listener in a smaller county, it's weighted. It's weighed against the larger metropolitan areas. So we don't reach a lot of the larger metropolitan areas, so they have to weight it in order to. And the mathematical way that they do it, I do not understand. It's way beyond me, but it's not fair. I could end up with 100% of the listeners in Anderson County and still not be the first station in Anderson County, because if a station has more listeners in Knox County, do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Anderson County don't carry as much weight as the other counties that are bigger and more influential. So even though I have more listeners, I still have a lower place in line as far as ratings. And so it's exactly the same thing, just with where we end up with the stations. I don't deal with that with my Knoxville stations because they cover everywhere.
Okay.
But Clinton, WYSH, we don't cover all of the metropolitan counties, so they have to weight it.
This is why I love to come by and see. I learned something. I've learned something new.
It's not fair, but it's, it is what it is. So.
Well, and think about it.
How do they weight the votes, though? What determines that my vote is going to be a little more weighted than the other guys?
Okay, when you get your ballot, okay, you get your choice. I'm going to vote for Chuck Fleischman, okay? Who's your second choice? Meredith. Who's your third choice? Beauchamp, okay? The next voter, okay? He votes for Beauchamp, and then he votes for Meredith.
Second.
And then he votes
so
for
I end up with
Fleischman.
more second place.
You win. You get more points. Yes, sir. And that's going on in America, and it is a trend with progressive. Take the 3rd District of Tennessee, okay?
Wow.
I won by 38 points. Okay, I've got a Democratic opponent, apparently very, very nice man. I'm going to beat that guy by 30 points, not because I'm the better candidate, okay? Put it down, okay? He's a nice guy. He's got a D by his name. It's not going to happen in the 3rd District.
I agree.
Okay?
Yes.
But if there were weighted voting, hint, hint, a lot of people would say, well, I'm going to vote for Chuck, but old so-and-so, he's a pretty good guy. I'll vote for him second. All right? And then you get all your fun progressives that get out there and say, well, I'll never vote for that Fleischman. He's too conservative. I don't like that guy. I'll vote for Democrat, and then I'll vote for independent second or nobody second. Put old Fleischman third, okay? Or not even vote for Fleischman.
Wow. And so it becomes weighted.
Changes the game.
That's crazy.
And Democrats are doing that all over the country.
I had no idea that went on. It doesn't. I can't. That just seems like something that would have to go in front of the Supreme Court.
How about our friends on the left coast in California?
They do that?
Well, they do worse than that.
How do you get worse?
How do you get worse? The 2 top vote getters in the primary are on the ballot. So in most districts, it's Democrat versus Democrat.
Oh, wow. So it doesn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
they don't even have the two-party system.
If we had a good Meredith Republican in San Francisco, okay, too bad. You're going to have two Dems, first and second.
Is Orange still Republican?
Yes.
That's the only place.
Orange is still Republican, and but it's competitive Republican.
Really?
We've got three good candidates out there that are running to cover Republican seats, but yes. But they should win. Now, there are still Democrat versus Republican races.
Sure.
Okay. Why? Because in the primary, the top two will be a Democrat and a Republican, or a Republican and a Democrat. But in many seats, it's Dem on Dem.
And those were put into place to favor one party or another at one time or another, I assume.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
But the progressives, the darn progressives and the Democrats, they play to win. I mean, I got upset with the last election. I objected to certification and the like. But the reality is the Democrats are putting in place all across the country where they can legally ways that benefit them.
They change the rules legally.
Yes. And Republicans stand around and say, well, what are we going to do? We don't like this. So guess what? Republicans are going to have to learn how to legally ballot harvest.
Play to win.
Yes. Those are the rules. You better learn how to play, because if you complain, you're going to continue to lose.
Yeah, you either need to get in the game or concede.
Yes.
Speaking of, we were talking court and stuff earlier, the former president, current frontrunner, has tons of legal issues.
Yes.
Some of which I think, at least two, I think are going to be tossed out immediately, but he's probably got two he's going to have to weather through. What's your opinion on that? And then what do you see that's going to do should he go on and become the president?
Great question. Well, you have to make a separation between the civil cases and the criminal case.
Sure.
Civil case, I'm a lawyer by profession, is a case involving money damages. So there's no potential jail time, no criminal culpability, but nobody likes to be sued for a lot of money. He's got a couple of those out there. Hopefully he will prevail in those cases. If he doesn't, he will have the right to go through the appellate process through the respective courts to deal with those and the like. On the criminal case,
and those have no bearing on whether or not he serves. That's just a civil problem. That's just
that is
yes,
correct.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. But this New York case, this judge, and I was reading an article the other day. His legal team in the New York fraud trial, which I think is a fallacy and is wrong. Nobody got hurt, but it's going on. He had the right to pick a jury. He chose a bench trial. Okay, and that's pretty much the same way in Tennessee. So let's say we have a good old-fashioned car wreck back in the day when I was a trial lawyer, right? Republicans just loved that, but that's what I did. Be that as it may, if my friend Meredith had a car wreck, I would demand a jury.
Yeah.
I wanted 12 Tennesseans, okay? I didn't want a judge, okay? I wanted 12 people. Now, he could have demanded a jury in New York. He did not. So he's got a judge who is trier of fact and trier of law. That concerns me, okay, his legal team. But that was the decision they made. So that judge is going to decide damages, okay, and liability. But
he still has the appellate, the state appellate, and then he'll have the –
correct.
As far as – I mean, I don't know that he'd go to the Supreme Court, but he still has the appellate process.
Absolutely.
No matter what happens in this first round, right?
But in very progressive states.
Yeah.
The New York State Court of Appeals, unfortunately, used to be a great, dignified court. Now it's a very progressive court. They're competent, but they're progressive, and that's bad.
And in civil cases, he doesn't have the authority as does he have the authority of president to
no immunity.
No immunity.
Correct.
That's what I thought. In a civil case, you don't.
Now let's talk about criminal. First of all, he's got that criminal case in Georgia.
Yes.
The prosecutor has problems. We've seen that out there. The judge wants to know about
her relationship,
any alleged relationships. I think they've stubbed their toe big time on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. He will win that case. Ultimately, he will win that case. But you don't want to face it. Now, the key in Georgia is it's state law. You don't have federal immunity for a state. He'd have to get that from Brian Kemp, God forbid if he ever was convicted and the like. And the prosecution knew that.
Yeah.
Now, as we look at these other criminal cases that are being brought against him in federal prosecutions, ultimately, I just don't think any of them now will go to court before he is ever elected president. The prosecution has pushed to try to get there quicker, sooner, in the United States Supreme Court. I think rightly so, has said, no, you're going to have to go through prosecutor, all of the different levels of appellate courts before we hear it. We're not going to make that decision now. And that's the court just being smart, not trying to come in and say, look, lower courts, we're bigger and stronger than you. We're going to make that decision.
We're going to let it run its course.
Yes. So do I think he'll be okay? Yes. Ultimately, is it a hindrance? I mean, the man's incredible.
I was just getting ready to ask that.
It takes a toll.
I saw a clip yesterday of a constituent that said, I don't know how any man can take what you're taking just as a person, much less to be running for president. And asked him, said, do you not realize, or do you realize that, that God has his hand on you in some way, shape, form, or fashion? And Trump said yes. But I look at that, it doesn't seem to faze him. I looked, he was at a funeral. He went to Melania's mother's funeral.
Yes.
Then he turned around and he went to a court case. And then that night he flew across the country and did a rally. It's just like all of that within maybe a 30-hour period.
Yes.
And looked as, fit as a fiddle to do it. He's 70-some years old.
He's sharp as a tack. Look, everyone's going to make mistakes on the campaign trail.
Sure.
I do too. Sometimes every once in a while. I remember years ago, and I was a lot younger. I'm a big baseball fan, by the way. I got the MVP in the baseball game.
Good for you.
You got to do that. That's exactly right. I don't know whether or not I deserved it or not, but I got the MVP.
Got it.
That's right. And I told Trump that, and he loved it. So he loves winners. He likes winners.
There you go.
But if I had lost, I wouldn't have told him. But be that as it may, I was talking one day about baseball and was interviewed nationally, and I said, let's play two. And that was old Ernie Banks, Chicago Cubs, great Hall of Famer and the like. And I got the quote wrong. I said it was Willie Mays.
Oh.
And I realized that after I said it, and had to call ABC, and we fixed it all. But when you're on the campaign trail, when you're on, Donald Trump has to be on all the time. I've got to be on all the time, but in a much smaller pond, if you will, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So when you're at that level, and that's why I don't get upset, even at politicians as much like Nikki Haley, who was going to lose, but nice lady. She has said some things on the campaign trail, and everybody jumps on her. But the reality is when you're out there all the time and under it, it's tough.
You're live all the time.
Yes,
There's not
sir.
a filter. You don't get the choice. You don't get to go back and edit.
Yep.
When you're out there live, and anything you do, they're going to jump on.
The great Billy Martin, Yankees manager, said to me, I sat next to him at a hockey game in high school, and I said, why did you ever bench Reggie Jackson? I couldn't get over that. Why did you ever do it? He looked at me, Billy Martin did, and he said, young man, do you ever make errors when you play baseball? And I said, yes, sir, I do. I do. Sadly, I still do. Not many, but I still do. But he said, do you ever make an error when you're not trying? And I said, no, sir, I don't. And he said, that's why I benched him. And I always thought of that. So I said, look, I'm going to make some errors out there. But I will always be trying.
You don't fail if you're not trying.
You
don't
got it.
make a mistake.
And so whether it's Trump or anybody else out there, poor Joe Biden, he's just not capable of doing the job. And that's what's sad about that. He's a controlled president. He's gotten some things right. He's gotten Israel right. And he's had a lot of staffers want to quit on him.
Yeah.
Because the radical left, I don't know why, they're supporting
terrorists.
Supporting terrorists. It's inconceivable why they're doing that, but they are. And hopefully Israel will emerge stronger.
I saw an interview where they were just out on the street talking to people, and I'd say probably 6 out of 10 people that they spoke to that were supporting Palestine had no idea even the circumstances. You know, they didn't even realize the invasion. They didn't realize any of the terrorist connections. They did, and in one point, the interviewer said, "Well, this happened and this, and what about this?" And they were like, "Oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe they killed babies." It's like a position of ignorance. Yep. You know, but that it's hugely detrimental. I just don't understand it.
It happened on October the 7th. People were raped. People were killed. It was a shocking attack. But I've been to Israel before, and I've seen where I supported the Iron Dome that shoots down these missiles. There's a speech on the House floor where I fought for the funding for that. Democrats were just not telling the truth. Democratic leadership was just not telling the truth, and I called them out. I mean, if you're going to be for something, be for something, okay? Tell the truth. And they kept saying, no, we didn't do this. And I knew that Pelosi was trying to kill Iron Dome funding for the squad. Finally, Tlaib got up, okay, against me and said, sure, we killed it. Sure, we did that. She was wrong, but she told the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, you could just watch them swallow their tongues. And a friend of mine from Florida who's now retired, from Ted Deutsch, a strong supporter of Israel, got up and said, Fleischman's right. He's telling the truth. But rockets going into Israel by the thousands, even before this, killing innocent civilians. So. I really feel fundamentally we've got to support Israel. I think it's biblical, but I also think it's just smart geopolitical.
They're our strongest ally in the Mideast. You talked about getting money for Oak Ridge and doing well for Oak Ridge, and I know that we all appreciate that. At the end of the day, though, how many $1 trillion in debt are we, Congressman?
We are $34 trillion in debt as a nation. Sadly, when I went to Congress, we were $15 trillion in debt. And that number, sadly, is going to grow. And the reason is because my age, and I know I'm a lot older than you are because you always look eternally young, but we are aging as a nation. Mm-hmm. What that is doing, candidly, the reality is it's the mandatory spending that's driving our deficits. Not that we don't need to be fiscally sound on the discretionary side. Everybody's like, oh, Fleischman's the cardinal, he's the all-powerful appropriator. All that's true, but that's only on discretionary spending.
Yeah.
That's 20 to 25% of our budget. 75% of our budget, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the national debt, 85% of Obamacare. These things that are tucked in that automatically happen without appropriations. And those numbers are going to continue. If we're honest, you didn't see Clinton or Trump or Biden or Trump or anybody else talking about that at the national level. They won't.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's mandatory spending. And the reason is we don't want to scare people. I've always said we're going to keep Social Security safe, secure for seniors.
But someday we're going to hit a wall.
We are going to hit a wall. But what we need to do is start doing things for the younger people to preserve it, but we've got to fund it. And it's going to be a solution. People said, what was the biggest disappointment with Barack Obama as president? And I said, well, I don't have enough fingers and toes to count them, but I'll tell you one that stood out. I was with John Boehner and President Obama, and Obama came into a room full of Republicans. Give him credit for that. He wasn't in the best mood, and we were very respectful to him. And Boehner stood up, and he said, let's go big on mandatory spending. And he said, Mr. President, it won't look like I want, it won't like you want, but it'll look what the American people need. So that meant some type of a compromise on mandatory spending,
sure,
which we need to have. That the vast majority of the American people can coalesce around. And President Obama looked at us and he just said, this is when we're at $15 trillion in debt. He says, I'm just not concerned about the deficit. That was his answer. That was the most disappointed I've ever been in a president when he said that, because a second-term Democrat would have been the best person ever to deal
fix
with
it.
that.
Yeah.
And he'd have gotten the help.
Yeah.
Boehner would have done it. We'd have done it.
So we could have made some hard choices.
We could have made some hard choices, protected Social Security, Medicare, made them solvent. We're going to have to do that eventually.
Is there ever an opportunity that the revenue that we generate can exceed the money that we spend, and we can cure our problems that way and generate, with all the new technologies that are coming on board, things that we've never generated revenue with before that we are now? Is that an option?
I wish it were. I do think we need to grow the pie, and that's why I want less taxes and less regulation so we continue to grow the wealth of this country in a very Milton Friedman-esque sort of way. But to answer your question, I will give you a statistic that stunned me. If we did away with every dollar of discretionary spending in this country, and that's all the things that I appropriate for, okay? Yeah. Department of Energy, defense spending is on the discretionary side of the budget. Just about anything you can think of that's not Social Security, Medicare, interest on the national debt, all those things that are mandatory. If we did away with every dollar of that spending, we'd still run deficit.
Wow.
Because of mandatory spending. It is overwhelming. It's 70 to 75% of our budget.
So it's going to have to be addressed at some point, or it's going to implode.
Yes. And when we do that, and give the Republicans in the House credit, we have basically said, in order to get things done, we want a bipartisan, bicameral, Republican, Democrat, House, Senate panel in the next Congress. Not now, in the next Congress, to sit down and come up with solutions that will help address that.
Do you have any idea who the president or who the former president is going to pick as a running mate?
Wow, great question.
He says he knows.
He says he knows, and we've talked about it. He has not told me. He's got a lot of good choices out there. I hope, candidly, he picks a woman. I think that will help us with particularly...
He says it's a guy.
Okay, I didn't know that.
He said that the other day. He said he when he was referring to him, and the commentator said, so it's a man. He goes, well, it's a guy.
Then I'd have to say probably a Tim Scott, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think if that's the case, because there's so many talented women in our party right now.
I hoped he would pick a woman as well.
Sarah Huckabee would be wonderful.
I think Sarah Huckabee would be amazing.
But if he says a man, maybe a Tim Scott, maybe a Republican governor who has a good track record, and we have several, but hopefully somebody who will be a unifier, if you will. The great thing about Donald Trump, you're always going to know where he stands.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I've been with him, whether it's been on Air Force One or at Mar-a-Lago or having dinner, or I sat next to him in Nashville across from Bill and Marcia, and we just had Senator Haggerty and Senator Blackburn, and we just had the best time ever. And
he's very good-natured, isn't he?
He's good-natured, and he's real.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's and if I can attribute any of my few attributes, is I try to be real. I don't try to go out and say, hey, I'm this to this person and that to that person. Now, does that upset Republicans sometimes? Sure it does. Does that upset Democrats sometimes? All the time. But I think somebody wrote about me today, and it was like the thing is like, I don't know why Andrew's running about Fleischman. He said he doesn't always vote the way I want, but most of the time he does, but he does a good job. And I said, wow, I'd never heard of this person before. And I said to my wife before I left, I got 2 cups of coffee out of the wife today, so I must be doing something right. So she said, wow, that's amazing. That person has just hit it right.
Yeah.
So
that's good news.
But Trump is real.
That's good. And so you feel like that he's going to be your next president?
I do.
That's good. Is there anything else going on that you want folks to know about that you're working on? Any particular projects or anything?
Yes. One of the things I'm trying to do, and by the way, again, I so appreciate your forum, your format to reach people for years. And you do this across Tennessee, and I so love radio. I cut my teeth in radio and had the Chuck Fleischman show in Chattanooga on 1310 WDOD, the Dynamo of Dixie, which is no longer. My listening audience was 55 to 95.
So welcome to the show.
Yeah, there you go, right? Yes. So we know that, but we had fun every Friday morning in Chattanooga, and actually was my catalyst for running. Right now, I do want to say this. I'm going out and talking to groups, and they're not all Republican groups. These are young people. These are senior citizens. These are women who, for whatever reason, now are in their 50s and 60s, who did not develop their full potential for whatever reason. And I'm going out and I'm saying, look, let me help you get to where you want to be. And I'm seeing success stories. And not all these people are Republicans. Most of them are, but some are independent. I hope they all vote. Some I don't even know how they vote. But we're reaching groups of people to try to develop potential and to try to be optimistic.
Give me an example.
Sure. About a month ago, the National Labs. I'm the Republican National Labs chairman in Congress. There's 17 national labs. The best is Oak Ridge National Lab.
Yes, sir.
That's my lab. I love them. Okay. By the way, we got a good new director there, Steven Streifer. I got his name right. My Steve is going to be happy with me. I've got him in my phone. I keep messing the guy's name up, but I like the guy. But I had people in from all the labs, and I just went closed door with a bunch of the young people in the competition. There was no media, and we closed the door, and they were from all the labs all over the country. And I just sat with them. They'd never been with a congressman before. I said, what do you think about us? What do you think what it's like up here? And they just started talking with me. And I said, well, we think this and we think that. And I said, well, look, let me talk to you. Well, what are you doing? Okay. Well, I'm working on fusion. What are you doing? I'm working on materials research. And I just sat there and I encouraged them. And the lobbyist for the lab was a very nice gentleman, name's Tyler. When he left, he said, wow, I've never been in a room like that where you actually had a positive conversation with these young people. And they all left and they said, Congressman, will you come to our competition the next day and speak? And I said, sure, I'll be there.
That's great.
So that's the kind of thing. Or our TCAP program in Tennessee. It's one of the best. We've got a good governor. He believes in technical education. I can't use I was good with a book, okay? You can imagine that. I couldn't build anything, couldn't fix anything, still can't. I'm 61, I don't realize that. I still try to fix things. And the wife says, don't try to fix it, you'll break it. She's right, I'm wrong, and I still try to fix things.
I get it.
But I go to a TCAT, and these folks are working on cars and working on engines. Mm-hmm. They taught me how to change oil. Okay? That didn't go too well for me. It seeped down my arm, but I tried, right? And I went to their graduation, and I told them, I said, I want to come back to your graduation. I'm proud of you all. So that's really the kind of thing that we want to really try to do and inspire these people.
Outside of party and inside of human being, just helping.
Yes, and you and I have a lot of friends who've done that.
Oh,
guys like Joe Hollingsworth, who I just think are stellar individuals. I hope he's listening.
I hope he is too. So he's probably somewhere overseas.
He's probably somewhere. That's right.
He's in the Bahamas.
Yeah, that's right. Having fun. But people like that, people like you, people who. So I'm trying to. I don't make New Year's resolutions, and not believe me, I'm far from perfect. I do a lot of things wrong, but I've never been a resolution person. But if I've made a resolve this year, is just to go out. I'm going to win re-election. That's not hubris or arrogance, but you're right. You called it early.
Yes.
I will, God willing, unless something happens to me. But I'll be the congressman in the next Congress. But I want to try to bring more people together, just really for a positive outcome.
How long do you want to be our congressman?
I'm going to say this candidly, as long as God lets me do that. I don't know if I never want to be governor. Okay, let me say that. Everybody and their uncle and aunt is wanting to run for governor. I do not want to be governor. I love our governor, Bill Lee. I like Bill Haslam. A lot of my friends are going to run for governor. I just prefer the D.C. venue to the national venue.
You ever thought about Senate? Did you think about that?
Yes. Okay. And a lot of people have talked to me about that. We have two great United States senators. They're going to be there for a while. But if President Trump plucks one of them, our governor's going to have to appoint somebody. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm in a good spot now. I'm a Cardinal subcommittee chair on appropriations.
Tell people what that means when you say Cardinal.
Okay. That means there's 12 subcommittees that are in the Appropriation Committee. These are the 12 coveted spots in Congress for a subcommittee chairman. I chair energy and water. That is so important to Oak Ridge. It is so important to our state and our nation. I'm working now, sadly, in depth on our nation's nuclear arsenal, okay, which we have to do. I'd rather be in a science lab 8 days a week, okay?
I got you.
But that's part of my job, right? Putin's a bad guy. The Russians and the Chinese are building their arsenals. The United States of America needs to keep our arsenal safe, secure, modern. The folks at Y12 are doing that every day.
Yeah.
They're incredible. But they're doing that at Pantex. They're doing that at Los Alamos. So I'm going to have to get involved in that. But right now, good spot. Maybe I'll chair the Appropriations Committee someday. Maybe I'll end up in the United States Senate. Maybe I'll end up in the cabinet. Okay?
That wouldn't be bad.
If Donald Trump calls and says, now, there's certain things I would take and certain things I wouldn't, okay? And he knows that.
Yeah.
We've had that talk, but because a lot of times he wants to put you where you want. Mr. President, I want to play first base. No, you're going to the outfield. Story of my life.
There you go.
But,
I was left field. That's what I
outfielder.
was. Left field. So
You were left fielder?
I was left
Okay,
fielder, yeah.
So I play center because I can still run.
I couldn't run then. Can't run now. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Congressman. I appreciate you coming in. I always do. When Cindy told me you were going to be in town.
Doesn't Cindy do a great job
She
for
does a
us here?
fantastic job.
We are
Absolutely.
so fortunate to have her
You
in
are
this
fortunate.
role.
Yes, sir.
And of course, she's got a great job now, but she did something that I think is one of the best professionals. She was a teacher here for years, and our teachers are near and dear to my heart. My gosh, you talk about inspiring groups. I'm talking to teachers all the time.
Good.
It's a tough profession. My daughter-in-law is a teacher, actually in the Ray County school, so I don't represent Ray County. She drives to Dayton every day. And the like, and she likes me.
It's a harder job teaching these days than it used to be.
It is.
The kids are. I've got 13-year-old twin boys that are in 8th grade, getting ready to go into high school. I've got a stepdaughter that's a freshman in high school right now, and then my son Trey's graduating in June or in May.
Wonderful.
So I've got him in the school system, and it's a different. Boy, it's a different world than it used to be when we were in school.
It is
much more difficult. And I guess diverse would be the polite way of saying it. Population.
Yes, respect and thank our teachers every day.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Thank you kindly for coming in. I appreciate it. I know you're going down to Hoskins here in a little bit, aren't you?
I'm going down to Hoskins. I love Hoskins. Absolutely. I talk about Hoskins all over America.
Oh, yeah.
I wish we had more Hoskins in America.
Earlier when you and I were talking about the Satanic Club and such. Russell was here. Sheriff comes up once a month and we talk. And
you got a good sheriff.
Oh, we do have a good
like
sheriff.
Him.
He's a good guy.
Walker's good.
He was talking about something. I meant to say this when you were talking about it. He said that sometimes he suspects people do things like that, the knee-jerk reaction of insisting that club comes in an effort that they can remove all the clubs, because then you can remove the Dragons for Christ or whatever else if you go in and you infringe on this particular group's rights, and they can just wipe it all out. So he said, we got to be. He don't like it either, but we got to be careful how we handle situations like that going forward.
Can't fathom why anybody would want to do that, but it's sad. Anyhow, we need to be on the right side of that one, and as I say, our great Judeo-Christian in this country tradition is wonderful. It's under attack, but we'll win because God's got it.
That's it. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
You've been listening to pre-recorded best of edition of Ask Your Neighbor on WYSH.
Thank you for listening to AM 1380 WYSH and Ask Your Neighbor. Make sure you tune in at 10 a.m. each day, Monday through Friday, right here on AM 1380 WYSH and BBB TV 12, or listen live online